My guest today is Olivia Julianna, who we've had on the show before. She's a Gen Z political consultant with a massive social media following, and she's a Texan. My parents live in a small conservative town in Texas, and if anyone can win them over, it's Olivia. Welcome to the show.
Always so much fun to be here.
We have got a lot to catch up on, but first I want to get a sense of just how you're feeling with Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket. My teenage kids, I've got two girls and a boy. They talk about the vibes. What are the vibes like right now?
I didn't sleep for 2 days. Like, after she was announced, it was like, it's going to be Kamala. I literally could not sleep because I was so excited. And I feel like I could go run a marathon right now based off pure adrenaline, off of how excited I am. And your kids are 100% right. The vibes are immaculate, as Gen Z would say. And it's just, she is so energetic. She is so talented and genuine and caring. And it really translates right now in a way I think that a lot of people haven't gotten to see before. I mean, I've gotten to see it a little bit because, I've met with her a few times over the last several years. But she's just this amazing, nice politician who I think for the first time in a long time is finally getting her flowers for all the things that she's done and for how wonderful she actually is.
I want to play this clip of her calling out former President Trump for saying he's not going to debate her. And what I want to call people's attention to is the joy with which she does it. There isn't this air of menace or vindictiveness like you see on the other side. She says to him at this rally in Atlanta, right? She says, and I hope you reconsider Donald, because if you have something to say to me, say it to my face. And she does it with a smile. Here's the clip.
But he and his running mate sure seem to have a lot to say about me. And by the way, don't you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird? Well, Donald, you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you got something to say, say it to my face.
Olivia, that's the Vice President Harris I have met. I think that's the real her. You probably know her a lot better than I do. I've only interacted with her briefly at events. She's the happy warrior.
Mm-hmm, she is. I feel like this is like Senate Judiciary Committee Kamala Harris, where she was just on top of her game, on top of the facts, on top of the details. And that's all coming out now mixed with her personality. And I think that is a horrible combination for Donald Trump, but a great combination for us Democrats, especially Democrats like me, who have kind of always had this, when they go low, I'll see them there mentality. Because I think finally it's like, no, like, these people are weird. We're not going to let them bully us. Like, they're the ones who should be getting called out for this. And I think that it strikes the exact right nerve for campaigning against Donald Trump, because this man is egotistical. We know that he does not like women, especially women of color. And now his ego is being goaded by the Vice President of the United States, who's running against him now, a former prosecutor, and he's now a convicted felon. I think it's just the exact right tone that she needs to take.
At the risk of making this a clip-heavy episode, I want to play that clip you referenced, Vice President Harris as a senator with a role in the Senate Judiciary Committee calling out Brett Kavanaugh. And I'm wearing my Rovember MeidasTouch shirt intentionally here. Here's Senator Harris on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm happy that answer a more specific question, but
Male versus female.
there are medical procedures.
Okay? That the government has the power to make a decision about a man's body.
I thought you were asking about medical procedures that are unique to men.
I'll repeat the question. Can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body?
I'm not thinking of any right now, Senator.
Olivia, this is going to be a key issue for the next 3 months. It's not why Vice President Harris was named for the top of the ticket. Her qualifications are immense, but she is the best person in the country to prosecute this particular case against the former president and his extremist radical running mate, JD Vance.
Yeah. I mean, abortion, it is a very important issue to me. Obviously, this is what I've been focusing on for the last several years. But I think I've heard it phrased to people as this is not the issue that is going to make people change their political party necessarily. But this is the issue that will move people who have been very rigid in deciding whether or not they were going to vote for Donald Trump, against Donald Trump, or for Kamala Harris. And I think that now the dynamic has shifted because, Joe Biden was running a campaign that was very focused on Roe v. Wade. But the difference is now is it's not coming from someone who has not experienced what it is like to be a woman trying to navigate healthcare in this country. And I think that with Kamala Harris in particular, she knows what it's like to have to make those decisions about your own body. But also, when she was a prosecutor, she focused a lot on, sexual violence. Like those were the cases that she was prosecuting. And so I'm sure that she is very familiar with this and she can speak to it from a much more personal perspective than any male politician could. And I think that that's really going to resonate with women. But I also think that on top of the ads we've seen, on top of how unapologetic she is on the issue, I do think that it moves men as well. My dad, I talked about my dad a lot in my political career, lifelong Republican, now voting for Colin Allred. One of the biggest points of contention in our relationship is when I was, 18, 19, he refused to take me to a women's march in Austin. And now my dad, is like, this is horrible. This is wrong. Like these people, they've gone way too far and we can't let them, make us go back even farther. And so I think that she has a really unique opportunity here to pick up a lot of those voters, especially a lot of those dads out there who are really concerned about their daughters.
You said we're not going back. Do you think that refrain that has been picked up by the K-Hive and the Harris campaign was accidental? Was it something she said on the stump that just lit up the crowd, or did they test it?
I think that they might have been testing it beforehand, and she said it out there and was like, "Oh wow, I didn't expect this kind of response." But I think it is the perfect contrast between her and Donald Trump. Number one, because Donald Trump is old. He's old. And, I talked about this earlier this week on MSNBC, is I said, we're talking about right now rolling back rights or rolling back projects that were put forward, in the past few years under this Project 2025 plan, like things that were put through by the Inflation Reduction Act, that kind of thing. But we're also talking about rolling back things that were signed into law, when my dad was a kid. We're talking about them doing things to roll back the Civil Rights Act. And I think that when I've talked a lot to voters or especially, Gen Z compared to their parents, Gen X or boomers, the number one thing that parents have said to me is they say, I wish that my kid was as engaged as you are, or their grandparents have said that. And the issue is, their parents and their grandparents remember what it was like to not have, the Civil Rights Act, to not have Roe v. Wade in place. They remember how horrible it was to not live with those protections, giving you more ability to keep your rights intact. And so now I think that this is really the first time ever that all of these generations combined, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, are all on the same page of this is horrible. Like we have gone back a step when it comes to reproductive health care. And I think that a lot of young people in particular are realizing now, like, this is what it is like to have lived as my parents or my grandparents. And I think that she is saying exactly what she needs to not only make people acutely aware what's going on, but to also create this intergenerational coalition that is going to be invaluable when it comes to defeating Donald Trump, flipping the House, and keeping the Senate.
How are young men in your generation responding to these assaults on women's rights? I know your dad has come around, and I'm so glad you talk about allyship and what we can do, because we just had Ryan Hamilton on, who nearly lost his wife just trying to get basic health care after a miscarriage. And there are a lot of men out there who are angry as well on behalf of the women they love, on behalf of their families, who I think are going to be animated to stand up.
Yeah. The young men that I know in my life, this issue is important to them. Out of curiosity, I kind of did like an informal poll with one of my friends who is a frat bro in Houston. And we got on a FaceTime call. He added in some of his friends who, I don't know these guys. I've never met them before. Some of them are conservative. Some of them are liberal. And we just kind of started asking him, like, we were testing these kind of culture war issues that the Republicans put up, drag queens, that kind of stuff, against the story of Amanda Zaworski from Texas. And every single one of them said that issue, Amanda's story, abortion access, was more important to them than any of the other culture war issues that we had brought up. And one of them in particular, and it struck me because he was the most conservative of this very small group that we had talked to. He said, abortion, this is important to me because we all know somebody who has experienced what it's like to need one and not be able to get it. And that is a phrase that I've never actually heard said before, doing what I've done the last few years. And I think that attitude and experience is something that's becoming more common since Roe was overturned, especially in Texas. And it just really resonated with me because, by all account, these are young men who, by the metrics, are, young, white. They shouldn't care about this issue as much as they do. But I think that they're starting to. And I think a big part of that reason is we're seeing a lot more men who are older start to be more vocal about these issues. And I think that that's necessary. So I want to say, if you've any older viewers, if you have sons who are in college or who are, freshly out of college or in high school, and you're a dad, you need to talk to your sons. You need to tell them, look, a woman should be able to make decisions about her own body. Because, what if it was someone you loved in this position? And that's something that moved my dad is, understanding me as his daughter, the position I'm in, not just, if I need an abortion, but doing abortion advocacy work as he's realized, wow, these people are crazy. They're threatening my daughter. And I think that personal touch there is going to move a lot of people, especially in my generation. I think it already has.
Can you update people on the status of the law in Texas? Because it is broadly representative of these medieval statutes in red states across the country, limiting women's access to health care. I mean, things have not gotten better.
No, things have gotten exponentially worse. And I would go as far as to say Texas has the worst abortion laws in the country. So we have two laws in place. We have I believe it's a pre-Roe trigger ban. It was put into effect before Roe was overturned with the explicit intent of banning abortion if it was. In Texas, abortion is illegal. Pretty much completely illegal. The only exception is if the life of the mother is at risk. But here's the problem with that. Doctors in Texas under this law, if they do provide abortion access and it's found that they violated state law, they can lose their medical license. They can go to prison for life, face up to 99 years in prison. They'll have to pay a $100,000 fine per violation. And that's just under the criminal aspects of this. This isn't also talking about the civil bounty law that we have in place, which incentivizes any private citizen to sue someone for aiding in abortion access for $10,000. So not only do we have doctors in this position where every time a doctor in Texas decides whether or not a patient needs an abortion, they have to weigh the life of that patient effectively against their own life and their own career, because they could go to prison for getting a patient the care they need. So what ends up happening is the story of Amanda Zawarski, where they literally have to wait until a patient is essentially on their deathbed, or it is certain that they will die if they don't get it, before they can access the care that they need. And what have we seen as a result of this? Maternal mortality rates have gone up. Infant mortality rates have gone up. And the healthcare outcomes in Texas have been just demonstrably horrible since Roe was overturned and this went into effect. And that's why I often tell people, I'm like, look, you can say Texas might not be competitive this cycle, but the bottom line is there is no state more important in the narrative of this election than the state of Texas. And that's because everything that happens in Texas spreads. The old saying, as goes Texas, so goes the nation. That's what's happening with all these horrible laws. And abortion is just the tip of the iceberg.
Maternal mortality is up. Infant mortality is up. Doesn't sound very pro-life to me. Can you explain the bounty system? When you talk about the ability to sue someone who abets an abortion, we're not just talking about hospital staff.
No, we're talking about Uber drivers. We're talking about, people but this is the sticky part of it, is what does it mean to aid? What does it mean to abet? What does it mean to help someone access abortion? If I am someone working in a clinic or a health center and I give you a pamphlet about how to access abortion care, am I aiding in you getting an abortion? Am I now civilly liable? And that's the issue there, is we don't know. We don't know what the parameters around it are. We don't know what counts and what doesn't count. And that's what makes it such an unsafe situation, because, what it really does is you're turning neighbor against neighbor. You're turning friend against friend. And, I think if a person is in a situation where they need abortion access, they might, take pause and think, is this somebody who I can trust with this information? Or is this somebody who is going to use this against me?
For money. Is this somebody who needs a quick $10,000?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a really horrible situation. The thing that actually scares me the most about Texas's abortion law is how few people actually know what it is. There have been studies that have come out that have shown, the majority of Texans of reproductive age don't actually know how severe Texas's abortion law is. And so I've kind of made this one of my projects, is like, I try to tell as many people as possible, like, no, you need to understand what's actually going on here. Because if you think that, you're okay, you have another thing coming for you. If you're pregnant and you have a complication and you need a D&C or a D&E, or a very basic procedure to help you with like miscarriage care, hate to break it to you, but that might not exactly be legal in the state of Texas anymore. And you might not have considered an abortion before, but you're probably going to have trouble accessing that now. And I think that that's the thing people really need to understand, is this isn't just, abortion care. These are a lot of times people who wanted to have a child, who are having complications, who are now in very dangerous and uncomfortable positions because the state government thinks that they know better about their bodies than they do as individuals.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely the case with the stories we've brought up, like Ryan's. Are Texans starting to catch on? Are these incredibly brave women and families that are speaking up to tell their stories having an effect on how Texans feel about this issue? Because I know it's having an effect in other parts of the country. We hear about this in Ohio.
I think they are. I think that, if you look at, vote.org, Voto Latino, the last few months, the biggest number of people registering to vote, some of those states, it's been Texas. People are starting to wake up to what's going on. And it doesn't hurt that at the same time we have this presidential election going on. We have the most unpopular Republican senator in the country at the top of the ticket, who has got a horrible record on abortion. And so, not only are people seeing these stories and hearing these stories organically through newspapers or through videos online, but now you've got political candidates who are running ads with these women telling these stories. In Kamala Harris's first ad, that Freedom ad, Dr. Austin Dennard her medical jacket was featured in it. Austin Dennard is one of the doctors and one of the women in Texas who is denied abortion care. But you also have Colin Allred, who has made this a core part of his campaign, who is going to be running advertisements and, making social media content about it as well. And so I think people are starting to catch on. I talk about my dad a lot. I don't often talk about, my extended family when it comes to politics because they're very apolitical, if not conservative. I've had probably about 5 of them in the last week call me and tell me, this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm voting for Kamala. Like Roe v. Wade. I can't do this. I can't vote for a felon. But a lot of it has come from them realizing, we all have a pregnant family member. What happens if that pregnant family member gets in one of these positions where they're going to need help? And then they're now realizing they might not be able to get it. So I think people are waking up.
Hey everyone, it's Ken Harbaugh, and I need to take a quick break here to ask for a favor. When I first started doing this show, I hoped it would catch on, but I didn't really believe we'd get to where we are today. That's because of all of you watching and sharing and supporting what we're trying to do here. If you're able to, please consider subscribing on Patreon. It's free to sign up. And if you want to chip in $5 a month, I promise every dollar goes back into this show and into the other pro-democracy work I care about, like my reporting from Ukraine. Head over to patreon.com/Ken Harbaugh to check it out. Thanks for everything. If you're like most of us born after 1970, your first razor was probably a multi-blade model. But have you ever wondered why we're still stuck with this technology? 2/3 of men expect irritation when they shave, and there's barely any information out there on how to prevent it. Not to mention, we're dumping over 2 billion plastic razors in landfills each year in the US alone. It's time for a change, and that's where Henson Shaving comes in. Henson Shaving is on a mission to revolutionize the shaving industry, not with gimmicks, but with real innovation. They're focusing on giving you a skin-friendly shave, not just a smooth one. Their razors are designed with precision in mind. We're talking aerospace level precision. The blade extends just 0.0013 inches past the shave plane. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. Seriously, there are parts on the planes I flew as a Navy pilot that weren't built with this level of precision. So it's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/boats to pick the razor for you and use code BOATS and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/boats and use code BOATS. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. Here's how it works. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Metabolic health is one of the keys to overall well-being. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. So, if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/boats to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/boats for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. You referred to the least popular member of the Senate, my senator, JD Vance, and his extremist positions on abortion. Let's specify. He believes, and he's put this in writing, in 0 exceptions for rape or incest. That's as extreme as it gets.
Mm-hmm. I was actually referring to Ted Cruz, but I think it says a lot that both of them that could be applicable to both of them. Because
when you said top of the ticket, that's funny. It's it's a mirror image, isn't it?
It's mirror image. That's pretty much both of them. But yeah, no, that is as extreme as it gets. And they can backtrack. And that's what Cruz has tried to do. He's tried to backtrack. And I think people are smarter than that. I think people know, and the difference between Ted Cruz and JD Vance is, say what you want about Ted Cruz, there is, to some people, not to me, a level of charm that he can have when it comes to politics, because he's a debate guy, he's a Supreme Court litigator, and so there's some people who Ted Cruz can get them, he can kind of wheel them in. JD Vance is the most unappealing, uncharismatic, just waste of space I have ever listened to in my entire life. Like, genuinely, I don't know who did the vetting for Donald Trump's team, but whoever that person was, I guarantee you they're the person who's going to be responsible for him losing in November. Because I can tell you this, I have seen in the last week, I've seen barely anything about Donald Trump. But I have consistently seen things about JD Vance. And I think that it's funny because I think that this is the exact dichotomy that Republicans were trying to create with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But now the shoe is on the other foot, because right now, to me, it doesn't seem like Donald Trump is running against Kamala Harris. It seems like JD Vance is running against Kamala Harris, because people are counting on the fact that Donald Trump is extremely old. And there is a real possibility that JD Vance, if elected, could become president of the United States. And for him to have as extreme a position as he has just blows my mind, because now you have Donald Trump, who appointed the Supreme Court justices, who led to Roe v. Wade being overturned, and you have JD Vance, who's like, oh, there should be no exceptions at all. Oh, and by the way, if you're a woman who doesn't have kids, like, you're a failure. Get out of here. Get out of my face.
And a greater share of the vote for heads of large families, whatever that is supposed to mean. I mean, the ideas are just out there. And word on the street, you asked about the vetting. The vetting was done by Eric and Don Jr., all the best people, right? And, they're getting what they paid for. And I kind of meant that tongue in cheek, but this was a paid for VP nomination when you look at JD Vance's tech bro backers who want him to grab the reins and become president. That's not how this works. That's not how America works. And I think we're seeing through it.
I think so too.
Yeah. You have said that Trump is winning on TikTok, that we need to pick up our game, that there are things Democrats can be doing but aren't. Where do we need to get better?
Well, the good news is we already have. I know I talked about this in Politico a few weeks ago, and I was like, the reason why Trump is winning on TikTok is because if you looked at Donald Trump's TikTok page compared to Joe Biden's TikTok page, Joe Biden was not very present there. He wasn't. And it was very policy focused. It was very like, these are the things we want to do. It's very issues focused. Whereas Donald Trump was kind of like, I'm Donald Trump. Watch me do cool stuff. Well, now Kamala Harris has just completely changed the narrative on this, because she's doing exactly what needs to be done. Is, I'm Kamala Harris. Look at me do cool stuff. Look at me look good doing it. And oh, by the way, I'm also cool and hot and awesome. I also think that you should have healthcare. You should be able to make decisions about your own body, and that we should invest in the future of this country. And she's done it in a way that is just so entertaining, and it's very it's very clear that the person who is running these accounts is someone who understands internet culture and understands TikTok. But I think the reason why it's so much more effective for her now than it is for Trump or for Biden is because Kamala Harris is a very youthful, fashionable energy to her. Like you believe that Kamala Harris knows what these things mean. You believe that she knows what these songs are, because she just has a very cool, fun energy to her. And I think that has just transcended everything we've seen to TikTok thus far. I think now when it comes to numbers, her TikTok is killing it. Both the Kamala HQ account and the Kamala account is doing phenomenal. And, I don't know the exact metrics on pro-Kamala content versus pro-Trump content in the last few weeks, but I'd be willing to say she is dog walking him, because there was a good 2-3 days there where I opened TikTok. I could not scroll without getting videos about her on my For You page. It's completely organic. It's just people who are excited. So if you're a Democrat and you're trying to decide, what do I want to do in terms of social media? How can I get better? You need to follow the Kamala Harris model, which is, first of all, be authentic to yourself. That's the key there. Be authentic. But also show that, hey, look, I'm cool and I do cool stuff and I know cool people. And I think that will help push out some more pro-Democrat content.
And for every video that the Harris HQ puts out, it seems like there are 100 that are just organically created by fans of the vice president. And that is something money can't buy.
Nope. You can't buy it. It's just people who are just truly, genuinely excited. And, I said this on Twitter before, and I meant this, is I've been doing this for 4 years now. So through the 2020 cycle, the 2022 cycle, and now into 2024, I have never, ever seen this kind of enthusiasm or organic content creation for any candidate anywhere in the country, ever. And it has just completely taken me by awe. And that's why people say, Gen Z might see this as like their Obama moment of like electing a cool young president. And I think that might be true. I think for us, I was 6 when Barack Obama won his election. I was 14 when Trump won his. Is our frame of reference has just been 2 old dudes duking it out for the last, 8 years. And now it's like Kamala Harris is here and it's like a breath of fresh air. And it is just something money can't buy that. That's just pure organic energy and joy in our candidate.
Are the registration numbers among young voters reflecting that? Is there enough time to harness this energy and turn it into votes?
Oh, absolutely. I think that don't quote me on the numbers here, but I'm pretty sure it was over 100,000 new voter registrations of people ages 18 to 34 after Kamala became the candidate through vote.org. And pretty much all of those registrations were in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, Ohio, North Carolina, and Arizona. So yeah, there's 100% time to turn this around. Absolutely time to turn this around. And I think, it's only the thing is we also think about here is, it's only been a week. It's only been a week of the content and the voter outreach, and we're here already. Where are we going to be a month from now after we've started the rallies and the ad buys and the TV show appearances? I think it's just going to keep getting better from here, and I also think that celebrities have already started like chiming in, Ariana Grande, Megan Thee Stallion, and I think that that's just going to keep going on and on and on. The real change maker here, the question here is going to be whether or not Taylor Swift is going to stick her neck out there. I think that's the thing that we're all waiting for is what is Taylor going to do? Hopefully she makes the right decision, and comes out for our girl Kamala, but it's yet to be seen. But young people are definitely excited.
If she makes the right decision, I'll pledge now to wear this shirt that my daughters got me at the last concert for that week's episode. I would be honored to do it. What are your biggest fears going into 2024?
That's a good one. Number one biggest fear for me is losing the Senate. That is my number one concern. I think the House, I think that it's going to be, I think it's going to be very difficult for Republicans in the House this year. But I am very concerned about the Senate. I am most concerned about Sherrod Brown and John Tester. And Jackie Rosen. I'm very concerned about Jackie Rosen. Not because I don't think that Jackie Rosen is a strong candidate, but because the Republican that she is running against has tried to make himself seem more moderate on abortion, and his wife has helped him do that by going on the campaign trail with him. And that concerns me because the thing is, no matter how moderate people might think a Republican is, the fact of the matter is, and this is the same case in Maryland, Larry Hogan, you're not just voting for that candidate you're voting for. You're voting for the leadership of the Senate. So even if you think you're voting for a moderate Republican like Sam Brown or Larry Hogan, what you're actually voting for is, you're voting for could be potentially Majority Leader Rick Scott. You're voting for what could be committee chair Ted Cruz if Ted Cruz is reelected. And so that is my number one concern right now is the U.S. Senate. Personally, when it comes to the presidential election, I think she's going to beat the brakes off of him. And I think that we might even see some really interesting flips. But that's my biggest concern is making sure that we keep the Senate so that we can keep cranking out these judicial nominations and that hopefully, God willing, we'll have the votes to codify Roe v. Wade into law.
You have talked about Project 2025 very publicly. You were just on MSNBC talking about it. It's obviously a threat to every American. It's a threat to democracy, but it's especially dangerous for Gen Z. Can you talk about what their dark vision for America holds in store for your generation?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing realistically right now is the proposal financially for the taxes. If you make less than $150,000 a year, they want to raise your taxes. That's predominantly all of my generation. So they want to raise our taxes at a time where a lot of states have not raised minimum wage, or wages in general have not been raised. So, inflation's gone up, but wages haven't been raised to match it. The cost of education has not gone down. A lot of young people are having issues with student loans or a number of other things, which have already faced attacks from the Supreme Court. So there are those financial aspects there. A big part of it for me is getting rid of the Department of Education and these public service student loans for people who are going into the medical field or who are public servants, nurses, police officers, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest things there for me, the social issues aspects of it, are banning mifepristone nationally, which is an abortion medication that accounts for the majority of all abortions in the United States. Rolling back civil rights protections. And I think that there's this kind of underbelly issue here. The biggest thing of Project 2025 that affects all of these things, the core tenet here, is reclassifying civil servants under Schedule F. And so what that would mean is that if Donald Trump were to win the election, he could come in and we have all these government agencies peppered around that have different roles. And these are not political appointments. These are not cabinet secretaries. These are not people who are advising the president directly. These are people oftentimes who are in these jobs for 10, 20, 30 years, where they're just making sure that people's Medicare benefits are going out, Social Security, Pell Grants are being processed, homeowner loans, all these different things are going out and they're being processed fairly. Donald Trump wants to take those people who have been there in those positions, these experts, and he wants to make them at-will employees, which means they can be fired at any time. And he wants to go through and replace all of these people with Donald Trump loyalists. So effectively, completely take control of every aspect of the federal government. And that's why a big part of Project 2025 has been collecting resumes of people and collecting resumes of conservatives so that they can fill these jobs with these Donald Trump loyalists. So if you're a young person now, it's not just about, my state government is not making sure that I'm taken care of. It's also, Donald Trump has reclassified the entire federal government, the entire bureaucracy under Schedule F. And now I can't get any of these federal services that I was supposed to have before. I can't access any of them. I can't get my Medicaid, my Medicare benefits to take care of my elderly parent or my child. I can't get my my social safety net programs. Like if I'm somebody who needs assistance, whether it's temporary assistance for needy families, whether it's SNAP benefits, I can't access this either through the federal government Or now, the federal government's doing this, but I also live in a state where my state government's not exactly helpful in this either. It's like now it's this double-edged sword of I can't get the assistance anywhere. And I think that really, really would negatively affect Gen Z because, a lot of us were just trying to figure out how to come into adulthood and to set ourselves up for success long term. But if we come into this with Project 2025 in place, it's kind of like, okay, well, you're not going to get Social Security. We're not going to give you civil rights protections and these kind of very fundamental institutional support systems that your parents and your grandparents have had access to. We're going to make sure that you don't have access to it in any way, shape, or form. And also, if you try to protest us, one of the parts of Project 2025 is we can do whatever we want to you because I'm the president and I can tell them to just go out and arrest you anywhere, anytime. So yeah, I think that's the kind of underbelly there that I think a lot of people in my generation don't really understand, but I think would have the biggest effect on them as a whole.
And now there's broad immunity for presidents who do that kind of thing, supposedly within the bounds of their office. You bring up something about Project 2025 that I don't think is talked about nearly enough, which is that it's not just an ambitious list of policy proposals running to nearly 1,000 pages. They're building the infrastructure to enact it. You talked about collecting resumes. This isn't just think tank stuff. This is government in waiting stuff.
Yeah, 100% it is. And that they being like, Donald Trump and the Republicans, they know that this is an issue that is motivating people and people are aware of because they've started to walk back from it. Here's the thing about this that really concerns me. If this is what they have put into writing,
I know where you're going.
This is what they have made public. What are they not telling us that they are planning on doing? And the thing is people might say, oh, well, don't be hyperbolic. It's not possible for them to get rid of the Civil Rights Act. Oh, it's not possible for them to ban interracial marriage. A lot of people said, well, it's not possible for them to overturn Roe v. Wade. And yet here we are. And I think that, Lincoln Project had an ad about this that was, you thought a lot of things weren't possible 4 years ago. And now here we are. They're building the infrastructure. They are fielding the names. They have gotten the resumes for people to hire not only into the federal government. The other thing that they've done is the right has built out a large, broad, sweeping network of influencers and media personalities who will help them shape this narrative. And I got onto a couple journalists about this because I was like, you guys talk a lot about Joe Biden courting influencers and the White House having influencers come and do roundtables. I don't see you all talking about the fact that there were influencers at the RNC. I don't see you all talking about the fact that there is proof that Republicans have paid influencers to try to sway public opinion on an issue, i.e. Ken Paxton when he was undergoing impeachment. They changed the election code in Texas. The Election Ethics Commission changed it because Ken Paxton was paying off influencers to post pro-Ken Paxton content and during his impeachment. I don't see people talking about that. And so I kind of see this overarching picture here of they've got the infrastructure and the means to tear the federal government down from the inside out. But now they also have the arm to normalize this to the public. And they will do that if we do not hold them accountable to it and we do not ensure that people know that this is absolutely insane.
Yep. Well, that's why we're here, Olivia. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to continue to hold them accountable. Let's talk again soon.
Absolutely.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.